We were quite good in livability, but we were very poor in innovation. They've all gone to Silicon Valley, but that's a shithole. Who wants to live there? I want this people to be thought of as a place where big businesses can come from. We got Halter and Rocket Labs, so we've produced a couple of superstars. That's just the view from my office. There's the city and this yacht race. Some of them are dogs and some of them are going to become billionaires, but it's a bit hard to tell at that stage. And once you've made it, there's no sense going somewhere else because this is where rich people want to come. There's probably 5 or 30 Halters and Rocket Labs floating around there that you haven't spotted, and you didn't see them coming because you didn't think Auckland or New Zealand was important. But it is, mate. This is a place where you can launch not just into America, you can launch into Asia, South America, China, India.
Just go and do it and see what happens.
Ideas are worth like jack shit, absolute jack shit. Like if you can't execute, there's nothing.
Just take that initiative to actually take whatever crazy ideas that they might have and just try to see what comes of it.
Don't be afraid of ambition. Chase it, love it, wrap your arms around it and say it out loud.
New Zealanders don't know any better. They will just get up and give it a shot. That's why we were first to get to the top of Mount Everest.
Go to dream that ultimate dream. Like, what is it that you ultimately want to do? And it's all achievable.
Mayor Brown, I don't know if you remember, but you actually attended the Auckland Startup Week last year. We were one of the co-organizers of it, and we had our portfolio day on that Tuesday, and you came to that event, and we spoke briefly. So that's the context.
Well, that's pretty good. I mean, I'm quite proud of that. I remember some billionaire investor came up to me and he said, "This is fantastic. How many years have you been going?" And I said, actually 3 months. So I think it was pretty successful. This year is going to be even bigger, of course, because I've been driven mad by doing 100. I agreed to do 100 little videos of startups without thinking about how much work that was involved. But I've done 76 and we're up to day 35, I think. And today's T-shirt is Callow Curb, which if I recall is something where you take a pill and it stops you eating too much so you don't end up looking like a waterbed or an American citizen, which is much the same thing.
Well, that's a great segue because we're gonna get to that. But I wanted to maybe start with something a little bit earlier. I read that in 1998, Clark actually called you in during the Auckland power crisis, and your own recollection of this, from what I understand, was that in 14 days you had it sorted, and the power came back on. So what was actually the first thing that you did on day one before anyone trusted you to fix anything?
Well, I kind of had a bit of a track record of having fixed hospitals and a few other things already. And I'm an engineer.
Okay.
That was the first time my city became truly famous, because I often speak to organisers, well, when did Auckland get famous? And they all think it was the Rugby Cup, or the America's Cup, both of which we've won. But limited number of countries are interested in rugby or sailing. But when we managed to turn the power off for 6 weeks, Nicaragua and various Kazakhstans and everything had on the front page kind of mocking a supposedly Western country for not managing to do that. And it was a good reason, because I was called in to go on and became the chair. And it's not the first, it's not the last time this has happened actually, but to discover that the board was full of lawyers and accountants and there was no engineers there. And so they're thinking, oh, what do we do now? And how the failure occurred it's a really good lesson. I was just recently asked to be a speaker in Singapore at a meeting of about 80 mayors from around the world. And again, I was able, because I'm a businessman and engineer primarily and a mayor secondarily, although I did win with an absolute landslide, so I'm quite popular. But Auckland went from, and 4 years ago, just as I got elected, we had a big storm. We went from the world's least prepared city for a storm to the most prepared city in 4 years. And that was really interesting. And I was speaking to they were all interested in floods, because in 2016, 1 in 20 world cities had a flood. In 2025, 1 in 4 had a flood. And so it's kind of like saying there is a problem with a result about the climate change. And even if the president of America doesn't agree with that, those sorts of things tell you something. And I was chatting to the mayor of Rotterdam, and 90% of Rotterdam is below sea level. And so, and that's impressive. And I said to him, man, you know, obviously the pumps are going flat out. And he said, yeah. And I said, you realise that there'll be a stage when the power fails? And he said, oh, no, we've got backups. And I said, I'll tell you what, you get a power failure like that in Auckland, and the people who were in charge didn't expect to have, and they weren't designing to have. But what happens is all power around the world, power systems have redundancy. And so when the first major cable failed, immediately it offloaded the load onto another system, which suddenly had its load doubled, and it failed. And so it immediately offloaded that system onto another system, and it unzipped like a fly. And I said, you'll have that. And that was in the days before everything linked by digitally. Now it's even more likely that will happen. And I said, unless you have two of your systems completely separated with only an analog switch to join them up, you will have the same failure. And he went back thinking, shit, hadn't thought of that. So it's amazing how few people with an understanding of engineering or technology are in positions of power outside China. And China, of course, everyone's an engineer. And but the rest of the world is sucked into having lawyers and accountants on boards and the last people I'd even let anywhere near anything. But there you go. So that's
it sounds like you being an engineer, being able to dive into the first principles, workings, helped you both with the power crisis in 1998, but also with the floods.
Yeah. Well, they're kind of like network systems, and even digital systems are just kind of digital versions of analog systems. Things that are all linked together, and most of them sensible to have some form of redundancy. Otherwise you're asking for trouble.
And can you walk us through what actually happened to you during that flooding? What was going through your head? How did you react to it?
Well, I'm blessed with a sense of humour, which hasn't helping sometimes. On the night of the flood, I was in my office in town, and it was kind of wet, but I looked out the window and there was no real problem. And Auckland is a very large city. It takes nearly 3 hours to drive from one side to the other. And so it sprawls out a lot. And we noticed it was raining. And the first time I realised there was a flood was someone in a pub I own in South Auckland rang up to say that the area where we smoke cigarettes outside is flooding. And I thought, well, it's not the end of the world. Go inside and stop smoking. And then we're unbeknown to me, and we didn't have the TV on. And then someone said, the TV on. Someone came up here. And I hadn't been the mayor very long. And turns out there was another Wayne Brown working for the council. And they rang him. And he thought, well, this is good. People are informing me. It's terrific. But they didn't have mine. So no one rang me. So I didn't know there was a flood going on. And then by the time I was told there was a flood coming on, it was later in the evening. And then I started to realise how ill-prepared we were because A, they didn't know who I was. B, I was asked to sign a declaration of emergency. And I thought, well, I don't know anything about that. I'll wait around until fire and emergency tell me to do that. And so as soon as they told me to do it, I signed it. And then the media kind of did the fact that I didn't like them because I'd been outed for calling the media drongos the week before. And they pounced on the fact that I hadn't done all this stuff and went on and on. And I just carried on. And ultimately, they proved themselves to be drongos. And we slowly got on top of things. And I had to fend off all this sudden horror story as if I'd caused the weather, which, Mia has powers, but I don't actually have the ability to control the weather. And if I do, they've forgotten to thank me when we had nice sunny days either. And I kind of mocked them along those lines because it was so ridiculous. And the public got sucked in by the media for a while until they realised that was actually a load of shit. And I didn't actually control the media. And we set about doing something about the fact that it was very poorly prepared. And we set about doing some things about it. And slowly we did some things about it. And we spent quite a lot of money doing things about it. But we made sure that we did things like making space for waters. And I discovered all sorts of nonsensical stuff where bridges had been built. And when it got on the road of the flood, and there was some very bad engineering and some worse approvals. There's a lot of people who had houses in places which were absolutely going to get flooded. And we had to endure several weeks of personal attacks and crap. And you just had to kind of put up with that and go and do the work, really, and hope that eventually the number of people who were intelligent increased over the number of people who were stupid. And it took a while, but eventually that happened. And then the media started to realise maybe this guy's actually got some ideas how to fix this. But it was a weird thing for a while. But you just got to take a long-term thing. And having been involved in other things, when the power goes off, people panic and do ridiculous things. And the media make dreadful statements because the media is particularly ill-informed about any form of basic engineering or technology. And a year after about 3 years after I'd fixed Vector, the Auckland Power Lines Company, I was suitably replaced by another lawyer who knew nothing about anything and couldn't even change the batteries in a torch, but had very close contacts with the government. And the I wrote a piece in the paper saying that Transpower, the national grid, would have a failure, because I'd been to a function where the current chairperson of Transpower, who was a knighted lawyer, he announced that we weren't going to do any upgrade on the grid because we will soon be transmitting power. And I'm thinking, you can just about transmit very low voltage from a phone immediately to something stuck next to it. But if we could transmit 400,000 volts through the air, then the Israelis would be using that in Gaza. I mean, and it was so ridiculous. I think this guy's a clown. And if they're not going to do any upgrading, then they're going to have a failure to supply Auckland. And they duly had a failure to supply Auckland and the minister at the time, because in most countries, politicians are politicians. Very few countries have an engineer who's put in charge of the electricity. And this poor bastard was dragged in front of the TV, and they said, "Why didn't you do what Wayne Brown suggested?" And he said, "Well, he's Wayne Brown." And he had the decency to put me in charge of Transpower. And we did something of fixing the grid. But it's pretty basic stuff. But if you have a society which praises the wrong people, you will have a lot of failures.
Places like China have a very technocratic regime. A lot of places that are democracies, they tend to favor the folks who are, who say nice things, who are charismatic, who perform well in front of crowds. Is it just luck in the draw that you happen to have a technical background, a technical mind, and also got elected?
Well, I brought my own luck. I mean, 4 years ago, I wasn't actually, but all those other ones, they just find me and ask me to come and step on. But mayor is a requirement to win an election. And about 4 years ago, I wasn't even living in Auckland. I've always had businesses in Auckland, and I had a batch in Ponsonby. I was living up north, and I looked at the sort of people who had their names up to be the mayor. And it's our biggest city, and it wasn't performing as well as it should have. And that my preceding mayor was a former politician. And there seems to be former politicians who never get to be the prime minister or get any good seem to find a refuge in being mayors. And the list of wonderful mayors who used to be a politician has yet to have its first entry. And they're all bloody hopeless, really. They kind of try and run a council like a government. And so the Reds hate the Blues and the Blues hate the Reds, and nothing gets done. And I'm neither of those things. I particularly dislike both parties. So I'm a centrist in a way. And I had enough money that I could stick $500,000 of my own money in to run a campaign, and I duly won. And then I went through all sorts of anger and anguish from the drongos in the media who finally caved in because they realised that the public quite likes people who are blunt and speak the truth, as opposed to people who speak political bollocks. And I remember my father told me, always tell the truth, because that way you can remember what you said. And I have kind of no filter and don't care. And then I stood again just to prove that everything I said was okay, and I got everyone else to raise the money the second time, and I had an absolute landslide. And we've got a government election coming up, whether we know landslides. I mean, anyone could win here because they're all kind of equally awful. And none of them have followed, none of them have looked at me and thought, man, there's a guy just tells the truth all the time and swears a bit and doesn't care about what people think, and they love him. But they haven't worked that out. So there you go. Who knows?
Yeah, something you're working on right now in terms of campaigns, we just talked about it earlier, is the 100 Days of Startups, and you're wearing a shirt right now. Maybe you can show us what you're wearing today.
That's today's shirt. I can't, and I could get away with it because it doesn't look too bad in a suit, because some of them have got sort of rude things written across the front. I couldn't wear that, but today's one's not a bad one. So, because I had to get up in the morning and speak to the cruise industry. And I'm very proud of the startup and the Tech Alliance, because I didn't get elected 4 years ago, particularly on a campaign. My campaign was to stop wasting money and do things like that and get the city to go better. And it came clear to me that the governments make speeches about how they're going to increase the economy, but I can't think of a single Western country where a government has actually made that happen. And it certainly wasn't happening here. And then there's a committee for Auckland who had examined what Auckland was doing, which is our only city, to be fair. I mean, the rest of them are kind of, by international standards, villages. We've got just under 2 million, and I've got suburbs with more people than the capital in Wellington. And so I thought, this committee for Auckland had done an analysis, and we're quite good in livability because it's a nice place to live. It's got a good climate, and we've got lovely harbours. And if you're going to be rich, it's a good place to be rich because everyone has a boat and we all have a lovely life. But we were very poor in innovation. And I thought, it's disappointing. I'm quite of an innovative thinker. There is some innovation here, but there's a lot of innovators, but there was no kind of ecology of innovation. And we have 3 universities who didn't talk to each other. There was the money people who didn't talk to the fresh starts. And I'd recently been in India, at Bangalore, which is a city which has some New Zealand innovators in it. I think who's there in Bangalore? It'll come to me. And the New Zealand company that had the software that guided the Indian satellite to the far side of the moon. There's a Kiwi company. I went over there and visited their head office. And while I was over there, they showed me to one of their nurseries for startups. And it was very clever in the Connecticut government, and the provinces in India are the size of France. So you don't need to deal with the whole of India. You just get a province. It's a big market. And Connecticut was a very smart place. And so I had the ideas about how you'd do this. So I asked the local staff, what is it you're missing? And they said leadership. And I said, well, I'm sort of guy's going to, I'm a good engineer and a good user of technology, but I'm not an inventor of technology. And I said, what I do, I can provide leadership. Is that what you want?
You're also very humble.
Thank you for saying that. But and world trade is getting more and more city to city rather than country to country, because most of the cities in France have economies the size of California. They're big, and we've had a 35-year sister city relationship with Guangzhou, for instance. Within half an hour of Guangzhou's amazing underground system, there are 80 million people, and so I know the leaders of all the Chinese cities for a number of reasons. I'm the leader of our biggest city, and in China the economy is mayoral led, not central government led. And the Chinese, and this is the biggest Chinese city outside China, Auckland, and so 300,000 Chinese here. And so that's one of our advantages. The diaspora of Chinese and Indians here is huge. And I'd been trading in China in my own name for quite a long time. It's pretty low level stuff. I had a surfboard factory and a clothing factory and stuff like that there. And I'd had and I'd led business groups up there over the period. And I speak enough Chinese to make an opening speech at a function, but I'll run out pretty quick. But tomorrow night I'm speaking at the Chinese Business Awards, and I'll be able to stand up and, Gui Jiabin Daja Wangsheng Ho and go on for a bit longer, and then I'll run out and then all think it's lovely, but then I'll be a bit. But
so who shirts in the morning? I mean, there's 100 days of this campaign. Who chooses the shirt for every day? And what does the day look like?
Well, I have to fit in very little of it. And I do them in bulk. I did another 12 this morning in an hour. And they all send in a shirt, and then we take them in order randomly as they arrive. And the first 100 get to be the 100, and I'll whack on a shirt. I'll have about half a page about what they do. And some of them I know I can understand immediately and say something sensible. And sometimes I have to read out what it says because I have no idea what they're selling me. And sometimes they're kind of quite challenging. When there was one, I don't know if you've been watching them, some of them are quite funny, really. I mean, someone had about something about how ladies preventing women's urinary dribbles. And I'm thinking, shit, oh dear, I don't know if I'm the right man for that one. I said, I'll try and be helpful here, but this is not my long suit. And it was quite funny, and I managed to do it with some dignity, and it became a huge success. Everyone wants to watch that one because it's funny. And the people who are doing it have thought it's quite good because at least their name's out there. And I didn't actually say anything particularly wrong, but I did point out for me that one. And so it's...
So you record a video of each of the startups that sends you a shirt to promote them and to get the name out.
And a lot of people read about them, and the people who need to know about it will find something about it. And at the end of it, and it's also publicising Startup Week, and there'll be thousands there. If there was 4,500 last year, it'd be more this year. And I'll put all 100 T-shirts on, I'll sign them, and I'll put them up on the wall, and we'll auction them for my charity, which is Sea Cleaners. And Sea Cleaners is a charity that I've been with as a founding trustee right from the start. Started with a smart young guy called Hayden Smith. And we have built up donation only to the point we have 5 boats and people on board, and we take out young people and we take them up the streets, up the streams and creeks, and pick up all the shit that people throw in there, which is mostly plastic and other weird stuff, and tires and supermarket trolleys, but plastic is bad. And we've now gathered thousands of tons of this stuff, which has been made into posts and other things, and we try and keep the harbour clean from this. And we've managed to get it throughout New Zealand. We've had it up in Hawaii, and we're able to show things that, for instance, the sand on the beach at Hawaii is now 15% plastic particles. And plastic is a real danger. And I'm trying to internationally publicise the fact, because you have all these do-gooding pricks around the world who are worried about climate change, which is a real thing. And it's going to be difficult, and it's not going to make life easy in Bangladesh. It's not going to kill us. But what we have found is plastic is in the food stream, and it could kill us. And it's only been going all my life. Plastic was only invented about the time I was invented. And we will welcome the round the world yacht race here next year, and they are sampling the ocean all the way around the world. And every cubic meter of the ocean has microplastics in it now. That's how bad plastics are. They're everywhere, and they're in the food chain. And if you live in Holland, where they eat mostly fish, it's in the people. And when it's on the sand on the beach and stuff like that, there, plastic is way more dangerous to us than climate change. Climate change make life in Australia a bit more expensive, and it won't be bad for us here. And it'll mean that people that grow stuff in America will then have to go up and get it in Canada, and people who grow stuff in Ukraine will have to get it in Russia. But it's not going to end things. It's just going to cause a change in the way we are. But plastics. And so when I was in India there, and last time you meet, we went out to meet business leaders, and some of their business leaders made me feel like a homeless man. They're all billionaires, and I'm thinking, shit. And we were in a room with one guy, and Indians love cricket, and some New Zealanders love cricket. And cricket to me is ultimately boring. I mean, all of a sudden. And so we're in this room. Everybody in the room was sort of kowtowing to this billionaire guy because he owned the Rajasthan Royals cricket team. And I had no idea. I thought the Rajasthan Royals was a band. And I kind of covered ignorance. And
it probably is. It probably is to me.
People are talking about things, and the Indians are definitely going very well. They're a long way behind China, but they will get there, and they're pushing up. And India's kind of like a conundrum wrapped up in a riddle. It's really hard to understand India, but really cocky. Said to these guys, hang on, pride comes before a fall. Here's a bit of danger you're saying. If someone goes along your coast by Mumbai along the coast and does a video of all the shit and plastic you guys are putting in the ocean, there's going to be a backlash against your country. You need to have sea cleaners. And they're actually thinking about it. So my export will be a low-tech, high-impact charity. So how about that?
Very cool.
That's incredible. We've covered, a lot of ground. So that's amazing that you're doing that. Yes, back on the, just a quick question. If a founder wants to get a shirt on your back, or an Auckland's building something, they want to get a shirt on your back, how do they do that?
Well, I'm not sure. I don't even know how we get these 100 got on the list, but we said we're going to 100 things. So I don't know. Are you going to Tech Week?
They find
a way somehow. Maybe what I'm offering to this sector is if I can be helpful, that's all. I'm not trying to impose myself on you. But if I'm taking a group of businesses to China because later this year, because I know the leaders, and I've been trading there myself a long time. As I say, I speak a bit of Chinese. I've been on TV endless times over there because just when you meet them, they're very formal, boring meetings. And I'll whip out a banjo and sing to them. And like nobody does. No business leaders, A, bother to speak Chinese, and B, whip out a banjo and get all my group to sing a Maori song to them. And they go straight on TV and everyone thinks, and it got to the stage where I'm recognised in the street as a silly old Kiwi guy. But it's powerful. And so I'm offering it to various companies. If you want to come on with me, I can open a door there for you and you might just meet somebody right there. And I've got 2 years to go. At that stage, I'm going to step off again. I don't want to, because I like parts of them. I like the power of being the mayor, of having a change, but I don't like sitting in rooms with stupid people. And you have to do quite a lot of that. And I'm not going to do that again. So
what's the change you want to see for the tech sector specifically in Auckland?
It'll be so recognised that by the end of 2 years as being the South Pacific centre of this, that it'll be irreversible as the place that people want to come. And then when I went to Singapore with the 60 mayors, or 80 mayors, or how many there were, they were all got up and said, we are looking for talent, as if that's some special plant you can get from somewhere or other. What they're meaning is they're really looking for smart young people to come and fire them up. And up till now, they've all gone to Silicon Valley, but that's a shithole. Who wants to live there? And if you're going to be smart and young people, I want this people to be thought of as a place where big businesses can come from. We've got Halter and Rocket Labs, so we've produced a couple of superstars. And if you want to be, everyone, those young people, they want to do this, they want to work hard and become rich. There's no sense becoming rich in a horrible place. And one of the things I point out here is We have the most beautiful harbour. And I'll show it around here. I'll turn this around. I don't know if you know it very well, but is that going to show you the harbour out there? That's just a view from my office.
Wow.
There's the city and this yacht race. Can you see the yacht race in the harbour? And up there by the bridge is a big marina. And there's 2,000 boats in that marina, average price $1 million. I got one of them. I actually got two if you wanted to buy one. But and we have 10 more marinas. No city in the world has that many pleasure boats. And,
so, I mean, that's for when you actually made it onto the other side and you exited your startup. But what's your value proposition for founders who are just getting started with building a business?
Well, come and live here because it's cheap to live here. We've got the government of now putting their Institute of Advanced Technology in Auckland. They were going to put it in Wellington, but all we got there was advanced bureaucracy, which wouldn't have helped anybody. But it's going to be here. We have Tech Week now here is available for the people there to start up, and so we're introducing the money to the risk takers. And I've looked at the 100 that came through. Some of them are dogs, and some of them are going to become billionaires. But it's a bit hard to tell at that stage. You've got to have a lot of. It's like horse racing. You've got to have a lot of tickets, but you're going to get a few winners out of this. And so, if you're a young person, it's a safe, clean place where your kids are going to get educated. Well, it's easy to get around. It's modest in costing, and once you've made it, there's no sense going somewhere else because this is where rich people want to come. And so if you lay those things out, it's a pretty good story to tell because, I mean, who wants to be, the richest guy in a lot of places aren't nice to live in, I got to tell you. And I've been to most countries and I've had businesses and traded in a lot of them. And I've had businesses in Russia. Not many people from New Zealand have done that, That's does that answer your question, Hendrik?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Mayor Brown, what do you think Auckland needs to build or include? I've heard that there's been some talk of more self-governance for the regions, right? So you can sort of try more stuff on your own rather than having the central government dictate that for you. What do you think in an ideal world?
I mean, people say, what is the worst thing about Auckland? And in a word, it's Wellington. We have a very central managing government who are basically incompetent, but they're not particularly more incompetent than the one before or the alternative. It's just that we have a central system whereby we've allowed the city of Wellington to grow so that 90% of the people there work in bureaucracy. And and they learn how to keep themselves employed at the expense of everybody else. And I know Washington quite well, although I'm not a great fan of America. I studied it. I was some years ago invited to study at a leaders group in Georgetown University, which is their preeminent foreign affairs university. You soon quickly learn why they've fucked everything up because they teach how to do that. And you can get a degree in fucking things up, What's
that degree called?
It'll be called diplomacy, I think. But to give you an idea, capital cities become completely disconnected from the rest of the country when they become completely separated from reality. And when Trump, who's also separated from reality, first became to be elected, I said he's going to win way before. I knew nothing about American policy, not even interested. But he had this thing drain the swamp, and it's exactly what we need here. And to show how divorced from reality Washington is, when Mrs. Clinton stood to be the president, she won 90% of the votes in Washington and lost the country. And New Zealand's like that. Wellington had no idea what the rest of New Zealand was. And they tell us how to live in Auckland. Auckland's a big international city. It's not really big, but by our standards, it's really big. There's 2 million people, very international. We've got big populations of Indians and Chinese in every bloody country. And there was 40% of Aucklanders weren't born here. And so we are connected, very, very connected. And we're midway between Asia and South America, which is people are finally working up because we suffered from the fact that the world has shown up as a flat map on the wall under the Mercator prediction. And we're always down the bottom right-hand side. And on American TV, they save space by moving in the margin and we disappear, which is very helpful. Trump has yet to know about us and yet to discover us like this or miseries you recently discovered. And so we're unlikely to be bombed, which makes us safe. But in fact, oddly enough, it's not a flat Earth; it's round. And so rather than being,
right? Are you sure?
Yeah, I am. I've looked past the flat Earth society. It's probably popular, and the shortest way between South America and Asia is landing in Auckland, and it's starting to happen. And so those are things that I'll leave behind. So in 2 years' time when I piss off, I would like to, instead of helping people that way, I'd like to go onto the boards of some of the real growing big companies and use my skills and throw a bit of cash in there and do really interesting stuff like that. And I've done my good for everybody by then, and that'll be it.
What do you think New Zealand and Auckland in particular can be really good at globally, right? Given what you've said about how unique it is, how it's positioned, both physically, but also having a very large expat population. There's been companies like Halter, like Rocket Lab, that have done really well.
Well, it's we got to sell what's good. Physically and climatically, it's a great place to be. That's a good start. It's safe. Education's pretty good really. Not world's best, but it's pretty good. I mean, our universities wouldn't be dumb enough to give a professorship to our former Prime Minister, Mrs. Ardern, but they did that over there, and immediately everyone realised that, what was the American university she got a thing at? Harvard? Well, everyone realised, well, that's a load of crap, then they wouldn't go there if they're that. And we're well connected to the Chinese universities. We're starting to think that, we're starting to realise that the world isn't the English-speaking world, and it's a good place to be well off. So why wouldn't you want to be smart here? And we do have all these advantages, and we're great at sport as well. Modi, for instance, from India, he doesn't need New Zealand at all. I mean, our population is less than the degree of inaccuracy in counting theirs. And so they may or may not, they only know their population within an accuracy of 5 million, which is our population. They don't need us.
Hey, bro.
Impressed with is how we do at sports. We get more gold medals at the Olympics than they do. And our cricket team.
Why is that? Why is that?
It's a healthy place to live. We don't have snow on the ground in winter. In fact, you got to drive for thousands of kilometres to even see snow from where I live, and that's up the top of a volcano. We swim all year long. You know, I surf even at my age and play tennis, and it's not unusual. And like most people, I have a nice boat and that sort of stuff there. So we live a good life, and I don't have to be worth $1 billion to do that.
Hey, Ron, what do you think about China and how New Zealand and China will play in the world, given the tension with the U.S., given New Zealand's also part of the Five Eyes, global order is fragmenting now, what we've known it to be.
Well, it's very all that other than what you read. China hasn't invaded anybody that I'm aware of. They're going to invade Taiwan, which is part of China, and any idiot who says we're going to save them is really stupid. Stay out of it. And America has constantly at war. It's lost every one in my lifetime. But they're very deep in Wellington. The CIA is in Wellington, and they've managed to convince a lot of our politicians that we're in danger, which is rubbish, really. And China is our biggest trading partner. It's the biggest trading partner of about 100 countries now. It's an important country. We're the second. We're probably one of the largest, if not the largest, Chinese city outside China. And so we need to have good relations with China. America is untrustworthy. I mean, their neighbour, Canada, suddenly gets bombed with 30% tariffs. They're irrational. And the other thing that I notice is that in China and India, the middle class are getting richer. In America, they're getting poorer. And they've all got guns. That strikes me and they've already had one civil war. I wouldn't be at all surprised to have another one. And so, I am a voice of reason of how we deal with China, but we've got some really stupid politicians. One guy who leads a party who's very anti-China at the moment has got less votes than I got. And so, I just got to be rational here. I'm probably, having said this, I'll probably be on a bad list from America right now, and I'll find them watching the house when I get home. Waste of time, mate, because I've got nothing in the house that's worth watching.
They might go for your boat instead.
Beg your pardon?
They might go for your boat instead.
Talking of boats and technology, last Saturday I went out on the America's Cup boat, the foil racing winner of the America's Cup. And we were doing 96 kilometres an hour on a cold day across choppy water. Absolutely mad.
Have you been on the Vesa boat, the electric hydrofoiling Vesa?
Yeah, I've been on that. Yeah,
what do you think of
that? But I mean, when you got a yacht that's doing 96 Ks, that's insane. I mean, it's technology gone feral, and the noise is unbelievable. The Gs when you go around a corner are about 3 Gs horizontal. You got to be slammed into the wall. If it goes wrong, it's kind of be tragic. And there's a little canister of oxygen in front of you to put in your mouth if you end up upside down. That didn't happen, but that's pretty. I mean, technology is not just about something on a computer.
Yeah,
that is unreal technology, super leading technology. That whole idea of those mad boats came out of Auckland. And that's something special. So we've got a lot of things that are worth following up from the city. It's a very clever city.
And maybe following up on
And I
Mark's
think-
question earlier, and you've seen 100, or you will have seen 100 startups by the end of this campaign. What's the next filter?
Bloody startups by the end of the campaign, mate. I'll be over it. Getting over it now, up to 76. God, no wonder I look so old. Fuck.
Is there anything that you've seen where you're like, wow, this is the next Rocket Lab?
Yeah, I think so, but I just can't remember which one it was now. I'd have to go back and see them. 100 is a lot to look at.
We look at that many in a, in an average sort of quarter, usually a couple of months. We're looking at about 100 startups every couple of months ourselves.
We try sticking a t-shirt on for each one and making a story about it and see if you remember them. Okay. I mean, I can remember the funniest one, which is the one about the ladies things. Is that might be the one that makes the most money. There have been, I've tried to sort them into ones, will I stick my money in this one? I wouldn't. And there are a small group that I put my money in, quite a large group that would kind of be okay. It's like the bell curve, there'll be a handful of super movers, there'll be a handful of complete dogs, and there'll be quite a lot of ones that just make it into a reasonable sized business without becoming enormous. It doesn't have to become enormous to be successful. If it turns over 3 or 4 million and makes 300,000 profit, then that's a good successful result as well. It doesn't all have to be. And I'm kind of old school. You have to make a profit for me to invest in you. But quite a lot of those huge, super multi-billion ones have yet to make a profit. And so I don't understand that sort of economics. I'm kind of old school. Don't make any money, I'm not going to have anything to do with it, even if a whole lot of other idiots. Some of them, they're like giant Ponzi schemes. More and more money poured into them, and none comes out the other side, and everyone feels fantastic about it. That's American version of that. China don't have anything like that. If 5 cent wasn't making money, you don't want to invest in it.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on the massive changes that are coming with AI? The automation possibilities, self-driving cars. Some of it's real.
Cars aren't anything new. I mean, in the city of Nansha, there's a company called Pony. You can't use Uber there. You use Pony, and you put in Pony and press buttons, and it translates from. I can't read Chinese. I can speak a little bit, but I can't read it, and it comes up and then tries in, and a car shows up, and you get in. There's nobody inside. It hasn't been for quite a long time, and you go around the town, and a dog runs out, and it toots at the dog, and it seems to know there's a dog there. So that's sort of bits there. I think AI has got to be treated a bit carefully. I'm really not convinced of the wisdom of building massive data centers and eating our power and our water in order just to have. Most of America's technology is better and better drivel. It's faster and faster ways to look at something that's not worth looking at. It's the stuff on TikTok, on X, and the stuff on Microsoft, and the stuff on Facebook. It's just shit. If you never looked at Facebook again, would you be any worse off? No, you'd be much better off because you wouldn't have wasted time looking at drivel. And so Chinese stuff tends to produce something you can use or eat or drive in. American stuff tends to produce trivia. It's the world's capital of incredibly valuable trivia or aggressive armaments that they're not going to use. I don't get it. And so should we start building more and more data centers? I'm in and fuck it, let it go stuff. I don't think that's. And so AI is, we're going to get people who are so stupid in the future, having never looked anything up now. Most people don't even know what a dictionary is. They have Google and so.
Heard of dictionary.com. It's a good website.
But are we getting cleverer? Jury's out on that. So is it capable of making things better? Yes. Is it capable of making things worse? Yes. Which of those are going to do? Both of them, I would say.
What advice do you have for, a 24, 25-year-old individual living in Auckland who's looking to create the next big tech success, tech breakout out of New Zealand, besides sending you a shirt, that is?
Well, one thing about New Zealand, it's really easy to do business here. It costs you $100 to start a company. It's getting harder because morons from America keep worrying about making us have stuff like, what's the stuff you have to go through for every so often for opening a bank account, all that shit. I hate it.
KYC?
Yeah. What a lot of rubbish. And I have to do that, And I'm thinking, really? Bring back cash.
Well,
one thing about being old
China
is that old people have been young and young people haven't been old. And so I know what it's like to be. And I went around the world when I was young and started businesses all over the planet. and it was good fun and in those days before when you could safely do that. And that was at the age of 21 when I knew everything. Now that and people
you
think
progressively got dumber.
You replace knowledge with wisdom, and wisdom's as rare as rocking horse shit. But all I'd say to a young person is stay here, mate. The world can come to you. You know, you meet people that have gone to London. Oh, my children in London. You think, shit, can't you get a job here? You know, London? To see England again, it'll be too soon.
Yeah, we have Auckland Startup Week coming up in October, and we hope to see you there at our portfolio day as well. Maybe to wrap this up, like, what's your pitch? I know you don't necessarily like the Americans. If you want to invite them over for Auckland Startup Week, what's your pitch?
Yeah, I don't dislike them at all. I mean, but I just have them in perspective. The idea that that's the greatest economy and the most powerful thing in the world is kind of a novel thought. I don't believe it.
What's the pitch to them to come and see Auckland Startup Week?
Well, there's probably 25 or 30 Halters and Rocket Labs floating around there that you haven't spotted, and you didn't see them coming because you didn't think Auckland or New Zealand was important. But it is, mate, you know. And this is a place where you can launch not just into America, you can launch into Asia, South America, China, India, and America, and even Europe, which I hear still exists.
Thank you for tuning in to TechMates. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with friends. We'll be back soon with more stories of Kiwi and Aussie founders reshaping the future and disrupting down under. Until next time, keep dreaming big and daring to disrupt.